Dragnet and artificial intelligence. How am I going to tie these two together? We'll see. First, Dragnet. Dragnet had two runs on TV. Actually, it was a radio series first. I'll have to see if I can find a couple of those to listen to. So we have the 1950s black and white series, and within that series, if you watch the 1967 color version, you notice that they're reusing certain actors and actresses that they're also using on the 1967 version. So it's almost like, which makes perfect sense, I guess. Jack Webb had, actors he liked working with. Maybe, they were easy to work with or whatever the case may be. But you see them used over and over again. There's this one woman, and sometimes she's the criminal, sometimes she's the victim, and it's just interesting to see reuse those characters. I mean, at one time, they would have a show. They had some, especially radio shows, but TV shows too, where a kind of a group of actors and actresses would play it each week. So they'd be in different roles each week to fit what the story is that they would be telling. So it's kind of not as extreme as that, but similar to that. So we see a lot of actors being reused. In a lot of today's TV shows, you wouldn't do that, but you would perhaps use the same character with the same actor in a later episode. But so that's interesting. So my wife and I are starting to watch this one, and it's familiar. And all of a sudden I say, wait a second, I've already seen this. How could I've already seen this? We've just started watching this. And these shows were, 1953 is when I'm born. So some of these shows are before I was even born. And so I think, gee, how can I figure this out? The first idea that comes to my head was, well, I could search Google for all of the episodes, and I could search for the 1950 series, and I could search all of the episodes for the 1967 versions and see if I can come up with something in the titles that would tell me they might be the same story. And so you could see that could take a while to doing. Or I could ask Bing. Bing is one of the artificial intelligence programs, whatever you want to call them. This one's Microsoft's. And it's funny, Microsoft got really made fun of when they first introduced it. Someone asked us who the first woman president was, and it said Hillary Clinton, and it went on to talk about the things she accomplished in presidency. And it's like, well, some artificial intelligence make up stuff, okay? Or you could say, since they don't have an intellect or understanding like us, they pull things from different sources and come up with the wrong conclusions. So I noticed even with Bard, this was originally too with Bard, I was using that for a while, and I asked it questions, and it would indeed confuse the person with other persons, and so this trying to find out, saying someone you actually knew physically or someone that's in the news or whatever, there could be information in there that was wrong because it took it from other sources. I even asked myself, and I was pointed to say that, I have a YouTube channel and I live in Maine or something like that. Well, the first part of the little paragraphs that Bard wrote were accurate, and then there was all this other stuff later, and it was, it wasn't me, but Mike Kennedy is a very common name. So I found Bing, getting back to Bing, to be really accurate now. And I suppose to some degree it depends on the questions you're asking. If there's a question where there's no factual answer. Like, I know just to test programs sometimes I put in the question, what was God doing before he created the universe? Okay, this was a question I believe Aristotle asked, and one of the early philosophers. So there's not a pat answer to that. They can't say in the year zero, da da da, whatever. So it's interesting to see how artificial intelligence will handle questions that are philosophical. Okay, so anyway, thinking of all the rigmaroles of why I could do it, how I could search this, because it's bugging me. I'm watching the show and thinking, why is this so familiar? Then I say, wait a second, could they be reusing plots? So I go to Bing, and this is what I ask Bing. And somehow, I don't know how it came about, but I communicate to Bing through Skype. It's only text, but I'll text the question. And I would say at most it takes 30 seconds, but usually it's really quick coming back with an answer. So here's a little paragraph I put in. Did Dragnet ever reuse plots? There was a plot about a missing baby Jesus from a nativity scene. It was in the original 1950 series. Was it used again in the 1980s color series as well? So there I've asked a bunch of questions, and tending with Google, you're going to get sites, and you're going to have to go to those sites and do it. So let's get a Bing's answer here. Okay. It says, yes, it seems that the plot about the missing baby Jesus from a nativity scene was reused in the 1987 color series of Dragnet, according to IMDb movie database, International Movie Database, and it's got a 1. In other words, this is going to give me several sources where I can go back and check what was actually answered here and see how factual I think it is. The episode was titled The Christmas Story, and it aired on December 21st, 1967. It was a remake of an earlier episode from the original 1950 series called The Big Little Jesus, and it aired on December 24th, 1953. Oh, I'm not even 1 year old yet at that time. Some of the actors reprised their roles from the original episode, such as Jack Webb as Sergeant Joe Friday, Harry Bartell as Xavier Rojas. It's in a Spanish mission church, kind of. Ralph Moody as Mr. Flavin, the pawn shop operator, because they're and Herb Megan as the hotel desk clerk. You can also watch the original episode on YouTube. So, I was able to ask it in a conversational way what I was looking for, and it answered with this, fairly detailed answer. But more importantly, it's got 3 sources. Well, two are the same place, but same source, but perhaps in different places. But one is ibdb.com, 2 is the same, but then 3 is youtube.com. So if I click those links, they're blue. If I click those links, they will go to the actual page on which this information was based. So I think that's good, rather than getting, this answer that you don't know if the information's right or not. At least with this, I can look at the different sources and see how reliable those are, and I can draw my own conclusion that this is correct. Or maybe if for some reason, say I wanted to present it to someone, I might look at this and then look at the sources and say, that source is not good. I'll have to change this, or whatever. But anyway, I think this Bing, at least how I'm using it through Skype, seems to be pretty good. It can answer questions that are kind of vague. I don't know if you use Google a lot, one of the problems is when you ask vague questions, you could get a ton of, it has, you could have like, 10,000 sites, and it picks the top few or something to give you. And it's like, what a mess. So in some ways, this artificial intelligence does provide you with better search results on, let's say, questions that aren't framed perfectly. It understands, like, that this idea of a black and white series and a color series. There's some understanding of how humans talk and what they actually mean, the context of what's being written, rather than just pulling out some things and matching it with some sites, based on how popular they were to be looked at for the contents of the question. So it's interesting. And I think I can see where artificial intelligence can be really good, but I can see where it could be really, really bad. I mean, it all depends on the person using it. It's just like the atomic bomb. You can use that technology to, destroy the world, or you could use it to create power plants that would virtually give free power to basically to everybody in the world almost. You could irrigate any desert, turn it back into land that could be used for farmland, or people live there and different things. But the more powerful the actual thing is, the more it can be used for good or for evil. Now, one thing interesting about this, I thought, gee, and this was based on a forgery case one time of this guy who was forging Mormon documents. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. But so if you could change or create 10 pages, say, on the internet with patently false information, and people were using this artificial intelligence to search a lot, you could I would think very easily key people over to those sites, the 10 sites you've set up, and not other sites that would say the exact opposite. So you could create a popular history, say, of events in the past versus the actual one. And by having, some questions that they can go to these sites and look at how accurate they think those sites are. But and I know that most people are just going to search, and they're going to look at the answer and say, this, Don Lemon basically lost his job for doing that. Or Googling when women were in their prime, and then saying that on air, and in reference to a political candidate who was a woman, but she was past her prime. So he was saying that in a derogatory way, that she might not be able to, uphold this office if she was elected. And it's like, yeah, Don Lemon got fired, basically, I think, over that. And, he got demoted, and he made the statement. He's in a panel with all women, too, and he says this horrible thing, like, if I, wanted to get rid of liberal talk hosts, news anchors or whatever on CNN, I would hypnotize them to say something stupid like this on air. So, but anyway, what I'm saying is, yeah, people are pretty stupid sometimes. They'll just Google something, and they'll take that as truth, and they don't check in on it. Well, Don Lemon paid big time. But, so there's a lot of negative ways that artificial intelligence could be used, but there are a lot of good ways that it could be used. You could imagine that they're saying now that some of these have the ability to write code for you. So the possibility exists for, say someone like me who doesn't know code to create an app for an Android phone. I may actually do that, but I'll probably learn a bit more about it before I try that. But the idea would be someone with a very minimal amount of knowledge about coding with the help of a program like this, could produce a solid app that could be used by other people on their phones. And it could be different things too. I mean, computer aided design, we've been using a long time. And, you know, some of the things with that have been in use for quite a while. So there is a potential for artificial intelligence to do a lot of good, but there, like I say, with anything, the more powerful it is, the potential for doing things that are really evil is there too. And I know Elon Musk, who is investing a lot in artificial intelligence, you know, the self-driving cars and things like that, has warned that artificial intelligence could be one of the most dangerous things that humankind face. So tell me what you think. Bing seems to be accurate this way through Skype. You know, you ask it questions in a conversational manner, it gives you back the results and the sites. That seems to be fairly solid to me, as opposed to, say, other ones that, you know, if you say, you make up to them, write 2 paragraphs about this, and you find all this information in there that's just suspect and it doesn't have sources. So there you go. And like I say, I wish the Dragnets on I'm watching them on Tubi. I wish they were better quality. And they say there's some remastered ones. I looked at some of those on YouTube, and the problem with them is they're at really low resolution. So yeah, watching them on your phone, it's okay, but by the time you put that on a big screen and you have a couple people watching it, it can be really irritating, the quality. And the series on Tubi too, there's sometimes trouble with the soundtrack. So anyway, there we go. I'm still enjoying it. It's fun to see the characters pop up, different characters, you know, like one of the first shows, if not the pilot, the bad guy was Lee Marvin. So I thought that was interesting. Tell me what you think about Dragnet and artificial intelligence.